Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirye Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistike. So continuing with the discussion on Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 20, the rainy season and autumn in Vrindavan. Text 22 onwards. Sarasva Shanta Rodhasu Nyushurangapi Sarasa Griheshu Shanta Krityeshu Gramya Ivaturashaya. The cranes continued dwelling on the shores of the lakes, although the shores were agitated during the rainy season, just as materialistic persons with contaminated minds always remain at home despite the many disturbances there. During the rainy season, there are often mudslides around the shores of lakes, and thorny bushes, stones, and other debris sometimes accumulate there. Despite all these inconveniences, ducks and cranes continue meandering around the lake shores. Similarly, innumerable painful occurrences are always disturbing family life, but a materialistic man never even considers leaving his family in the hands of his grown sons and going away for spiritual improvement. He regards such an idea as shocking and uncivilized because he is completely ignorant of the absolute truth and his relationship to that truth. So this is about the grihasthas who just don't want to give up the family life. Of course, this doesn't mean sitting at home we cannot perform bhakti. We can. Most of the grihasthas do. But the point is, there's a time when one just starts getting detached from the rest of start giving up the responsibilities and start growing more and more spiritually. That's a time. One has to come to that time. Jaloghyar nir abhidyanta setu varshatishvare pashandinam sadvades ved marga kalo yatha. When Indra sent forth his rains, the flood waters broke through the irrigation dikes in the agricultural fields. Just as in the Kali Yuga, the atheists' false theories break down the boundaries of Vedic injunctions. Kali Yuga means everything is topsy-turvy. So Vedic injunctions, so many Vedic injunctions are there, but nobody wants to follow. They just want to make up their own injunctions. So they just want to find faults with the Vedic injunctions. This is how it works in Kali Yuga. Vyamunjan vayur bhirnunna uttebhyashchamritam ghana yatha shisho vishpatayaha kale kale dvijeritaha. The clouds, impelled by the winds, release their nectarian water for the benefit of all living beings. Just as kings, instructed by the Brahmin priest, dispense charity to the citizens. Srila Prabhupada comments, in the rainy season, the clouds, tossed by the wind, deliver water that is welcomed like nectar. When the Vedic followers of Brahmins inspire rich men like kings and the wealthy mercantile community to give charity in the performance of great sacrifices, the distribution of such wealth is also nectarian. The four sections of human society, namely the Brahmins, the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, and the Shudras, are meant to live peacefully in a cooperative mood. This is possible when they're guided by expert Vedic Brahmins who perform sacrifices and distribute wealth equally. So this is one of the duties of the Brahmin priest, to instruct the kings how to take care of the citizens properly. And Brahmins are supposed to be above any sectarian or narrow vision. They're supposed to be very satisfied and very broad-minded. So they would instruct the kings to take care of all the citizens, and king, following their order and the instructions, would give charity, would take care of the population. And just like the clouds, they deliver rain during rainy season. Evam vanam tad varshishtham pakpur kharjur jambut mat gopalar vritorantum sabala pravishadhari. When the Vrindavan forest had thus become resplendent, filled with ripe dates and jambu fruits, Lord Krishna, surrounded by his cows and cowherd boyfriends and accompanied by Sri Balaram, entered that forest to enjoy. Dhenvo mand gaminya udho bharena bhuyasa yayur bhagavata huta druttam pritya snutstana. The cows had to move slowly because of their weighty milk bags, but they ran quickly to the Supreme Personality of Godhead as soon as he called them, their affection for him causing their udders to become wet. Srila Prabhupada comments, the cows being fed by new grasses became very healthy, and the milk bags were all very full. When Lord Krishna called them by name, they immediately came to him out of affection, and in their joyful condition, the milk flowed from their bags. So the milk flows from the bags, first of all, when the bags are completely full, and then they have so much of love for Krishna that they wanted to feed him their milk. So the bags were overflowing. Vanokasa pramudita vanarajir madhuchyuta jaladhara gireranadad asanna dandrishe guha. The Lord saw the joyful aborigine girls of the forest, the trees dripping sweet sap, and the mountain waterfalls, whose resounding indicated that there were caves nearby. Kvachid vanaspati krode guhayam chabi varshati nirvishya bhagavan reme kandamula falashana. When it rained, the Lord would sometimes enter a cave or the hollow of a tree to play and to eat roots and fruits. Srila Sanatana Goswami explains that during the rainy season, bulbs and roots are very tender and palatable, and Lord Krishna would eat them along with wild fruits found in the forest. Lord Krishna and his young boyfriends would sit in the hollow of a tree or within a cave and enjoy pastimes while waiting for the rain to stop. Dadhyo danam samanitam shilayam salilantike sambojaniya gobuje gopah sankarshanvitaha. Lord Krishna would take his meal of boiled rice and yogurt sent from home in the company of Lord Sankarshan and the cowherd boys who regularly ate with him. They would all sit down to eat on a large stone near the water. Shadvalopari sambhishya charvato milek trikshanam triptan vrishan vatsatran gashva so thobhar shrama pravrit shriyam chatam vikshya sarvakala sukhavaham bhagwan pujayam chakre atma shakti upabramhitam. Lord Krishna watched the contented bulls, calves, and cows sitting on the green grass and grazing with closed eyes. And he saw that the cows were tired from the burden of their heavy milk bags. Thus, observing the beauty and opulence of Vrindavan's rainy season, a perennial source of great happiness, the Lord offered all respect to that season, which was expanded from his own internal potency. The lush beauty of the rainy season in Vrindavan is meant to enhance the pleasure pastimes of Shri Krishna. Thus, to set the scene for the Lord's loving affairs, his internal potency makes all the arrangements described in this chapter. So his internal potency of Yog Maya is making all these arrangements. Evam nivasto astasmin Ramakeshvayor vraje Sharat Sambhavad Vayabhra Swachambhava Paru Shanila. While Lord Brahm and Lord Keshav were thus dwelling in Vrindavan, the fall season arrived, when the sky is cloudless, the water clear, and the wind gentle. Sharada Nirajotpatya Nirani Prakritim Yayu Prashtanam Ev Chetansi Punar Yoga Nishevaya. The autumn season, which regenerated the lotus flowers, also restored the various bodies of water to their original purity, just as the process of devotional service purifies the minds of the fallen yogis when they return to it. So the fall season or the autumn season after rainy season, during rainy season, the lakes and the rivers, they get muddy. But during this autumn season, everything becomes clear again. So it is comparing to the process of devotional service, which purifies the minds of the fallen yogis when they return to it. Vyomno abhram bhuta shabalyam bhuva pankam pamalam sharajahara shraminam Krishne bhaktir yatha shubham. Autumn cleared the sky of clouds, let the animals get out of their crowded living conditions, cleaned the earth of its covering of mud, and purified the water of contamination. In the same way that loving service rendered to Lord Krishna frees the members of the four spiritual orders from their respective troubles. Every human being must perform the prescribed duties corresponding to one of the four spiritual orders of life. These divisions are Brahmacharya, Grihastha, Vanprastha, and Sannyas. A Brahmachari must perform many menial duties during his student life, but as he becomes advanced in loving service to Krishna, his superiors recognize his spiritual status and elevate him to higher duties. The innumerable obligations performed on behalf of wife and children constantly harass the household, but as he becomes advanced in loving service to Krishna, he is automatically elevated by the laws of nature to more enjoyable spiritual occupations, and he somehow minimizes material duties. Those in the Vanprastha or retired order of life also perform many duties, and these can also be replaced by ecstatic loving service to Krishna. Similarly, renounced life has many natural difficulties, not the least of which is that sannyasis or renounced men are inclined to meditate on the impersonal aspect of the absolute truth. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita, klesho diktarastesha, for those whose minds are attached to the unmanifested, impersonal feature of the Lord, advancement is exceedingly painful. But as soon as a sannyasi takes to preaching the glories of Krishna in every town and village, his life becomes a blissful sequence of beautiful spiritual realizations. So in every ashram, one can make progress and stay in that ashram and still make progress. In the autumn season, the sky returns to its natural blue color. The vanishing of the clouds is like the vanishing of troublesome duties in brahmachari life. Just after summer comes a rainy season when the animals sometimes become disturbed by the torrential storms and thus huddle together. But the autumn season signals a time for the animals to go to their respective areas and live more peacefully. This represents a householder becoming free from the harassment of family duties and being able to devote more of his time to spiritual responsibilities, which are the real goal of life, both for himself and his family. The removal of the muddy layer on the earth is like the removal of the inconveniences of Vanprastha life, and the purification of the water is like the sanctification of sannyas life by one's preaching the glories of Krishna without sex desire. So everything, autumn time means everything becomes clean and very conducive for animals to go out because they all huddle together in the rainy season. They cannot go out. So just like in everybody's life, in householder's life, it is that becoming free from the harassment of family duties, taken care of their responsibilities. Now they can devote more time to spiritual responsibilities, and like others also. So this is what the autumn season in Vrindavan means. Sarvasvam jalada hitva vireju shubra varchasa yatha tyaktashana shanta munya mukta kilbisha. The clouds, having given up all they possess, shone forth with purified effulgence, just like peaceful sages who have given up all material desires and are thus free of all sinful propensities. When the clouds are filled with water, they are dark and cover the sun's rays, just as the material mind of an impure man covers a soul shining within. But when the clouds pour down their rain, they become white and then brilliantly reflect the shining sun. Just as a man who gives up all material desires and sinful propensities becomes purified and then brilliantly reflects his own soul and the supreme soul within. So this brilliantly reflects his own soul and the supreme soul, because our souls are covered up by this material impure consciousness, or consciousness, real consciousness is covered up by the modes of nature and the false ego. So by practicing devotional service, slowly, all these coverings go away, and the brilliancy is restored. Girya mumuchastoyam vachinna mumucho shivam yatha jnanamritam kale jnanino dadate nava. During this season, the mountains sometimes release the pure water and sometimes did not. Just as experts in transcendental science sometimes give the nectar of transcendental knowledge and sometimes do not. The first part of this chapter described the rainy season, and the second part has been dealing with the autumn season, which begins when the rain stops. During the rainy season, water always flows from the mountains, but during the autumn, the water sometimes flows and sometimes does not. Similarly, great saintly teachers sometimes speak expansively on spiritual knowledge, and sometimes they are silent. The self-realized soul is closely in touch with the Supreme Soul. And according to his desires, or the Supreme Soul, or Paramatma's desires, a competent spiritual scientist may or may not describe the absolute truth, depending on the specific circumstances. Means he sees if the people in the audience are qualified to hear the subject matter. And if he feels they're not qualified, then he might not give the details, or he might not go too deep into the subject matter. Just like once Prabhupada was in Hyderabad, and one couple approached him. They were very pious people, absolutely, looks like. So they approached Prabhupada. Swamiji, please tell us more about Radha and Krishna's pastimes. Prabhupada told them some things, some philosophy, but they kept on insisting, please tell us more about Radha and Krishna's pastimes. And Prabhupada said, well, I don't think you're qualified. Not in that words, but something. Simple words, not hurting their feelings, but he said. They said, well, no, Swamiji, I think we are qualified. Well, then Prabhupada said, well, you might be qualified, but I'm not qualified. So obviously, Prabhupada didn't want to speak on Radha and Krishna's intimate pastime because they were not ready. And actually, we are also not really ready. And when we come to the 5 chapters, starting from 29th chapter, 10th canto, We have to be very careful because those pastimes are very, very confidential, very intimate pastimes. Ras Leela, this and that. And not understanding them in the right perspective, with proper mood, we sometimes make a mistake. And then we think they are just ordinary pastimes of ordinary teenage boy and girls. But that is not true. So we cannot minimize those. Those are the topmost pastimes of Krishna and Radharani and the Gopis in the spiritual world. Topmost. Prabhupada has tried to give some insight into it in his Krishna book. But that's about it. We cannot go beyond that. And until we are eligible, we cannot even understand that. So this is what here it is said, that sometimes they give the knowledge and sometimes they don't. Neva vidan kshiyamanam jalam gadha jale charaha yathayuranvaham shayam nara moda kutumbinaha. The fish swimming in the increasingly shallow water did not at all understand that the water was diminishing. Just as foolish family men cannot see how the time they have left to live is diminishing with every passing day. After the rainy season, the water gradually goes down. But stupid fish do not understand this. Thus, they are often stranded on the lake shores and river banks. Similarly, those infatuated with family life do not understand that the remainder of their life is constantly decreasing. And not just the remainder of the life, with every day, our energy is also decreasing constantly. The strength is going down. Thus, they fail to perfect the Krishna consciousness and are stranded in the cycle of birth and death. Gadhvari charastapam avindan chardarkajam yatha daridra kripana kutumbya vijitendriya. Just as a miserly, poverty-stricken person overly absorbed in family life suffers because he cannot control his senses, the fish swimming in the shallow water had to suffer the heat of the autumn sun. Although as described in the previous verse, unintelligent fish are not aware of the diminishing water. One may think these fish are still happy according to the old proverb, ignorance is bliss. But even the ignorant fish are scorched by the autumn sun. Similarly, although an attached family man may consider his ignorance of spiritual life blissful, he is constantly disturbed by the problems of family life, and indeed his uncontrolled senses lead him into a situation of unrelieved anguish. Unrelieved anguish. So ignorance is the bliss. And many times people quote this thing. But if we are ignorant of our surroundings or impending danger or what is going to happen in the future, it's not bliss, because the future is going to show up. We are going to get old. We are getting old. Our strength is reducing. Our days are getting numbered. And if I think, oh, I'm ignorant, let me enjoy, let me just use up my money and the energy and into just sense gratification, well, very soon death will be knocking at our door. Then what? So the art of life is actually to prepare for that ultimate exam. And everybody has to go through it, whether we are ignorant or whether we are knowledgeable. We have to go through it. So those Those who are intelligent, they start preparing. That's all. Shane shaner jahu pankam sthalanyamam chavirudha yatam amatam dhira shariradi. Gradually, the different areas of land gave up their muddy condition and the plants grew past their unripe stage, the same way that sober sages give up egotism and possessiveness. These are based on things different from the real self, namely the material body and its byproducts. The word Adishu in this verse indicates the byproducts of the body, such as children, home, and wealth. So slowly, sober sage, he starts giving up egotism and possessiveness. So egotism actually means talking more about himself. Egoism is thinking more about himself, and egotism is talking more about himself. So he only talks about Krishna. Nishalam bur bhutushnim samudra sharadagame atmani uparate samyam munirvyu paratagamaha. With the arrival of autumn, the ocean and the lakes become silent. Their water still, just like a sage who has desisted from all material activities and given up his recitation of Vedic mantras. One recites ordinary Vedic mantras for material promotion, mystic power, and impersonal salvation. But when a sage is completely free of personal desire, he vibrates the transcendental glories of the Supreme Lord exclusively. So he doesn't want to talk or do anything else. No more karmakanda. He just wants to talk about Krishna or chant the holy names of Krishna. Kedarebhyas tapo agrihanan karchaka dhrida setubhi yatha pranaya srava jagyanam tannirodhena yogina. In the same way that the practitioners of yoga bring their senses under strict control to check their consciousness from flowing out through the agitated senses, the farmers erected strong mud banks to keep the water within the rice fields from draining out. Srila Prabhupada comments, in autumn, farmers save the water within the fields by building strong walls so that the water contained within the field cannot run out. There is hardly any hope for new rainfall. Therefore, they want to save whatever is in the field. Similarly, a person who's actually advanced in self-realization protects his energy by controlling the senses. It is advised that after the age of 50, one should retire from family life and conserve the energy of the body for utilization in the advancement of Krishna consciousness. Unless one is able to control the senses and engage them in the transcendental loving service of Mukunda, there is no possibility of salvation. So we have to use all, if not all, then most of our energy in the service of Krishna. Shardar kashu janstapan bhutanam udupo aharat deha bhimanajam bodho kundo vraja yoshitam. The autumn moon relieved all creatures of the suffering caused by the sun's rays, just as wisdom relieves a person of the misery caused by his identifying with this material body, and as Lord Mukunda relieves Vrindavan's ladies of the distress caused by their separation from him. Kham shobhata nirmegham sharad vimala tarakam sattva yuktam yatha chittam shabda brahmartha darshanam. Free of clouds and filled with clearly visible stars, the autumn sky shone brilliantly, just like the spiritual consciousness of one who has directly experienced the purport of the Vedic scriptures. The clear and starry autumn sky can also be compared to the pure heart of the devotee. The spiritual nature is always brilliant, clean, and blissful. And this spiritual nature, called Vaikuntha, immediately satisfies all the desires of the soul. This is the secret of Krishna consciousness. So everything is clean, no material desires, no material contamination, and the soul is shining forth. Why? Because of the spiritual consciousness is shining forth now. Akhanda mandalo vyomni rarajodu ganeshashi yatha yadupati Krishna vrishni chakra vrito bhuvi. The full moon shone in the sky, surrounded by stars, just as Sri Krishna, the Lord of the Yadu dynasty, shone brilliantly on the earth, surrounded by all the Vrishnis. Srila Sanatana Goswami explains that in Vrindavan, the full moon is eternally rising. And this full moon is like the full manifestation of the absolute truth, Sri Krishna. When he was manifest on earth, Lord Krishna was surrounded by prominent members of the Vrishni dynasty, such as Nanda, Upananda, Vasudeva, and Akrura. So surrounded by all Vrishnis. Although he appeared on Ashtami, Janma Ashtami, but it was like full moon has come forth. Because first of all, he appeared in Chandra lunar dynasty. So Chandra was very happy that the Supreme Lord has appeared in my dynasty. So he appeared fully. So as long as he was there, it was like always full moon. But see, in spiritual world, sun and moon are there, but they are there not just to make it day and night. They are there to serve Krishna. Whatever pleases him, they do it for his pastimes. Ashlishya samashitoshnam prasunnavanam aratam janastapam jahur gopyo na Krishna hrita chetasaha. Except for the gopis whose hearts had been stolen by Krishna, the people could forget their suffering by embracing the wind coming from the flower-filled forest. This wind was neither hot nor cold. Gavo mriga khaga narya pushpinya sharada bhavan anviya mana svavrisha falarisha kriyaiva. By the influence of the autumn season, all the cows, doe, women, and female birds became fertile and were followed by their respective mates in search of sexual enjoyment, just as activities performed for the service of the Supreme Lord are automatically followed by all beneficial results. Srila Prabhupada comments, on the arrival of the autumn season, all the cows, deer, birds, and females in general become pregnant, because in that season, generally all the husbands become impelled by sex desire. This is exactly like the transcendentalists who, by the grace of the Supreme Lord, are bestowed with the benediction of their destinations in life. Srila Rupa Goswami has instructed in his Updeshamrita that one should perform devotional service with great enthusiasm. Patience and conviction should follow the rules and regulations, keep oneself clean from material contamination, and stay in the association of devotees. So what will happen? By following these principles, one is sure to achieve the desired result of devotional service. For he who patiently follows the regulative principles of devotional service, the time will come when he will achieve the results, as a wife reap results by becoming pregnant. So, as Rupa Goswami says, we have to carry on with our devotional service with patience, enthusiasm, and conviction. And at the right time, the results will come. Udhrishyan varijani suryothane kumudvina tagya tu nirabhaya loka yatha dasyun vina nripa. O King Parikshit, when the autumn sun rose, all the lotus flowers blossomed happily. except the night blooming kumud. Just as in the presence of a strong ruler, everyone becomes fearless except the thieves. So just like now the thieves or the Gunda elements in UP, they're going to the police station and surrendering. And oh, please put us in the jail. We don't want to be outside. Puragrameshu vagrayana indriyascha mahotsava babhokhu shashyadya kalabhyam nitaram hare. In all the towns and villages, people held great festivals, performing the Vedic fire sacrifice for honoring and tasting the first grains of the new harvest, along with similar celebrations that followed local customs and traditions. Thus, the earth, rich with newly grown grain and especially beautified by the presence of Krishna and Balram, shone brilliantly as an expansion of the Supreme Lord. So this is what happens in the autumn season. The word agrayana refers to a particular authorized Vedic sacrifice, and the word indriya refers to folk ceremonies that have somewhat worldly objectives. Prabhupada comments as follows. During autumn, the field becomes filled with ripened grains. At that time, the people become happy over the harvest and observe various ceremonies such as Navanna, the offering of new grains to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The new grains are first offered to the deities in various temples, and all are invited to take sweet rice made with these new grains. There are other religious ceremonies and methods of worship, particularly in Bengal, where the greatest of such ceremonies is held, called Durga Puja. So similarly, other places also. So this, see, India still is agricultural based, and these traditions, these ceremonies, festivals, all according to the related to the grains. The crops are going to be harvested, or when the new grains are coming up, various festivals, and all the traditions were related with the deities. So deity worship, very, very important, and offering the deities everything new means we are being grateful for whatever is coming in our lives is through the Lord, is by the mercy of the Lord. And that is why when we are living in the cities and working in maybe IT industry or this and that, we don't understand, we don't relate ourselves to the Lord. That's the problem. We don't, when we design a chip or some program, we don't offer it to the deity. Don't offer it to the Lord. We think, I have done it. And that's why village life is very, very important, because it connects us with the Lord, with the nature. Vaninga muni niripasnata nirgamyarthan prapedire varsharudha yatha siddha swapindana kala agate. The merchants, sages, kings, and the brahmachari students kept in by the rain were at last free to go out and attain their desired objects, just as those who achieve perfection in this life can, when the proper time comes, leave the material body and attain their respective forms. Srila Prabhupada comments, in Vrindavan, the autumn season was very beautiful then because of the presence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna and Balram. The mercantile community, the royal order, and the great sages were free to move to achieve their desired benedictions. Similarly, the transcendentalists, when freed from the encagement of the material body, also achieved their desired goal. During the rainy season, the mercantile community cannot move from one place to another and so do not get their desired profit. Nor can the royal order go from one place to another to collect taxes from the people. As for saintly persons who must travel to preach transcendental knowledge, They also are restrained by the rainy season. But during the autumn, all of them leave their confines. In the case of the transcendentalist, be a jnani, a yogi, or a devotee, because of the material body, he cannot actually enjoy spiritual achievement. So with this material body, because this body has so many limitations and conditions, it gets sick, it can do only certain things, it needs proper rest, proper nourishment. So there's so many limitations. So we cannot really enjoy everything spiritually with this material body. But as soon as he gives up the body or after death, the jnani merges into the spiritual effulgence of the Supreme Lord. The yogi transfers himself to the various higher planets, and the devotee goes to the planet of the Supreme Lord, Golok Vrindavan, or the Vaikunthas, and thus enjoys his eternal spiritual life. So the rainy season is when we have to put in our effort in devotional service. And autumn season, when everything is clear, means we are ready to go back home, back to Godhead, and enjoy fully. So beautiful chapter and beautiful analogies given in this chapter. So thus ends the purpose of this 10th canto, 20th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The Rainy Season and Autumn in Vrindavan. So we still have time, and we can start chapter 21. The Gopis glorify the song of Krishna's flute. Sheshukuvacha ittham sharat swachjalam padmakar sugandhina nyavishadvayuna vatam sa go gopalako achyutaha. Shukdev Goswami said, thus the Vrindavan forest was filled with transparent autumnal waters and cooled by the breezes perfumed with the fragrance of lotus flowers growing in the clear lakes. The infallible Lord, accompanied by his cows and cowherd boyfriends, entered that Vrindavan forest. Kusumit Vanaraji Shushmi Bringa Dvijkul Ghusht Sarah Sarin Mahidram Madhupatir Vagaya Charyanagaha Sah Pashu Pala Balash Chukuj Venu. The lakes, rivers, and hills of Vrindavan resounded with the sounds of maddened bees and flocks of birds moving about the flowering trees. In the company of the cowherd boys and Balaram, Madhupati, Shri Krishna entered that forest. And while herding the cows, he began to vibrate his flute. As suggested by the words Chukuj Venum, Lord Krishna skillfully blended the sound of his flute with the lovely sounds of Vrindavan's multicolored birds. Thus an irresistible heavenly vibration was created. So Krishna and Krishna's flute, they're just, first of all, inseparable, and they create wonderful atmosphere by the sound coming from his flute. And he is the only, among all his incarnations, he is the only one who plays on the flute. Tadvrajstriya ashrutya venu geetam smarodayam kashit paroksham krishnasya swasakhibhyo anvavarnayam. When the young ladies in the cowherd village of Vraj heard the songs of Krishna's flute, which arouses the influence of Cupid, some of them privately began describing Krishna's qualities to their intimate friends. So again, we have to understand the position of these gopis. They're not material people, first of all. They're all completely spiritual. And their attraction towards Krishna is not, here it says, arouses the influence of Cupid. But this Cupid is not material Cupid. It is spiritual Cupid, spiritual Madan. So their attraction towards Krishna, first of all, is not for their sense gratification. It's only for Krishna's pleasure. And this is part of Madhurya Ras, and even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says in his teaching that Gopis' mood or Gopis' dealings with Krishna, that's the topmost in the spiritual world. So just listening to the flute of Krishna, they started describing Krishna's qualities to the intimate friends. Now, as I said, Shukdev Goswami did not take the names of the Gopis, but obviously we know it's Radharani, Lalita, Vishaka, and other Gopis. So they are talking to themselves. And Krishna's flutes, when the words or the sound comes out of the Krishna's flutes, so like at the end of the day when Krishna is bringing the cows back to Nandakau, when he plays on his flute, then all the cows, they are hearing their names. Everybody is hearing her name through the flute. And here, middle of the day or whenever Krishna is playing flute for the gopis, every gopi is hearing her name from the sound coming from the flute of Krishna. So not an ordinary flute and not an ordinary player of the flute either. Tad varnetum arabdha smarantaya Krishna chestitam nashakan smara vegena vikshipta manaso nripa. The cowherd girls began to speak about Krishna, but when they remembered his activities of king, the power of Cupid disturbed their minds, and thus they could not speak. Next verse is beautiful verse, and if we can memorize this. Varha pidam natvara vapuh karanayo karanikaram vibradvasa kanak kapisham vajyantim chamalam randhrana venor adhar sudhya purayan gopu vrindaranyam swapadaramanam pravishad gita kirtihi. So what is Krishna wearing? A peacock feather ornament upon his head, blue karnikara flowers on his ears, a yellow garment as brilliant as gold, and the Vajanti garland. Lord Krishna exhibited his transcendental form as the greatest of dancers as he entered the forest of Vrindavan, beautifying it with the marks of his footprints. He filled the holes of his flute with the nectar of his lips, and the cowherd boys sang his glories. The gopis remembered all the transcendental qualities of Krishna mentioned in this verse. Krishna's artful way of dressing in the beautiful blue flowers placed over his ears excited the gopis' romantic desires. And as he poured the nectar of his lips into the flute, they simply lost themselves in ecstatic love for him. So just listening to the flute, they could remember Krishna, Krishna's beauty, Krishna's dress, Krishna's peacock feather on his head, so many other things. So this is where we want to be at. Anything that we see, of course, everything belongs to Krishna, and everything should remind us of Krishna only. In fact, in the first canto, we studied when Shukdev Goswami took birth. So first, for 16 years, he did not come out of his mother's womb. 16 years. And the Ved-Vyasi, he tried to convince him. He was speaking to him, and the Shukdev Goswami was in the womb, and Ved-Vyasi from outside was speaking that please come out. Because Ved Vyaji's idea was because he wanted to give this knowledge of Srimad Bhagavatam to Shukdev Goswami, who can reveal the knowledge later to others. But Shukdev Goswami wasn't coming out. Then Krishna came from Dwarka and he convinced Shukdev Goswami. He asked, "What is your what's the problem? What's the issue? Why are you not coming out?" And Shukdev Goswami said that, "Oh, I am afraid of Maya. And as soon as I come out, I'll fall into Maya, so I don't want to come out." And when Krishna had to assure him that you will not fall into Maya, come out. And when Krishna gave that assurance, he came out of the womb of his mother. But as soon as he came out, he left. He said, "I'm not going to stay in the ashram because my father is a grahastha, and he will later on, he will think that I'll also get into grahastha ashram. I'm not going to stay. I'm leaving." So he left. And as we studied, he never used to wear any clothes. So he just left. And he was living in the forest. He made his own hut or someplace and he was living. Now Ved Vyasa wanted him back in the ashram so that he could teach him Bhagavatam. So Ved Vyasa, what he did, he sent some of his disciples around the ashram of Shukdev Goswami. And they were singing two verses from Bhagavatam. One was Aho Baki Yamastana Kutam. That Baki means Putna, sister of Bakasur, who came and she had put all this poison on her breast and she let Krishna suck that breast, and Krishna sucking that breast, he sucked the life air out of Putna's body. And he's so merciful that he gave the destination of Dhatri, the nurse, in Golok Vrindavan to Putna. Who could be more merciful than him? Kimva Dhyalum Sharanam Varjema. And the second verse was this Varhapidam Natvaravapu Vesham. Natvaravapu Karaneo Karanikara. So these two verses, they were singing. And when Shukdev Goswami heard these two beautiful verses, he understood. We cannot understand the meaning because we don't know Sanskrit. He understood and he said, "Who taught you these verses?" And they said, "Well, it was taught by our guru, whose ashram is not far from here. If you want to learn, you can come to our guru's ashram and learn from him." And Shukdev Goswami came and then he saw Ved Vyasa and then he understood the whole thing. But then he said, "I want to learn Bhagavatam. I want to hear Bhagavatam from you." So these were the two verses that he heard. Beautiful, beautiful verses. So anyway, we'll stop here. See anybody has any questions or comments.
Prabhuji, what does the Vedas say about old widowed women? Can they live with their children or they should live separately for bhakti? Should they live with their children or no?
Actually, yeah, that's what the scriptures say, that the women should be taken care of by their fathers when they're young, by their husbands when they're married, and by the grown-up son when they're old.
But for men, they say they should go
Take sannyas and leave.
to the sannyas and leave, right?
Yeah, but then every condition is different. So we have to say time, place, circumstance.
Okay.
So there is no saying that we cannot stay at home and do bhakti. It doesn't say that. One can do bhakti, staying at home and do bhakti. Idea is to get attached to Krishna and get detached from material entanglements. That's all.
Yes. True.
So that's all. That's all we have to do.
Okay.
So whatever helps, whatever is favorable for that, we do it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Suppose somebody is old, but he is sick, he or she is sick. So it doesn't make sense that him to go out and do tapasya or for travel here and there. Hey, Baba, you're sick, just stay home. Do your bhajan.
Mm-hmm. That is true.
Okay, so we'll stop here. You all have a safe and wonderful day. Hare Krishna.
Thank you,
Jai Shri
Prabhuji.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Jai Shri Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna.
Hare